Can you hear me now, everybody?
No, I can't hear you.
I was going to play teacher and call you by name and tell you to sit down, please. It's time to begin our service. So I would appreciate, I see you all being good little doobies. Good. Excellent. So, good morning. I see a few straggling in, and I will let them take their time to sit down, and be very happy to be up here and seeing you again. I am Sharon Whitehill. I don't mind using my name, and I welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship this morning. We call ourselves Uufcc, and I am your worship associate today. I wanted first thing to remind you to put your electronic devices in what we call worship mode. I will remind you toward the end, just before the extinguishing of the chalice, to turn them back on. But for now, we'll enter into this quiet time together. We begin each week by singing an invitation together, even as we are scattered in many different places. So please remain muted if you're at home, and hum if you're here and would like to. As the UUFCC choir sings, enter, rejoice, and zoom in, or come in, or stay in. I think we have some newcomers today, very happy news, and I would ask if you would please stand so that we can see who you are, and then when the service is over and we're socializing out on the patio, we will know who you are. Would you mind, Valerie and Marianne? There they are, so be sure to, thank you, thank you. I want to express my gratitude, as always, to those supporting the technology this morning. That would be Corey and Tom and Sue and Sharon G. Always a big thank you to our music director, Jim, and Linda, and members of the UUFCC choir, whom you've just heard, for the recorded music. Today, a special thanks to Jim for live piano music. He has a medley for us. And I will say that this service is being broadcast live on YouTube, and it will be available later for viewing on UUFCC YouTube. Before we get started, a couple of things, just what I think of as housekeeping details. As I indicated a minute ago, we use, in general, only first names here to respect people's privacy, since we are on YouTube. We suggest that if you're at home, you have a chalice or a candle ready for the chalice lighting ritual. We remind those of you at home that you will be able, after the service, to gather on Zoom for a social time. You would be using our universal link. And do please be patient while we first close down the YouTube connections. Again, this morning you see our lovely tree, and you will remember, most of you or many of you, our traditional way of decorating it together. So, if you're here in the sanctuary, as those of you in front of me are, and if you've picked up a little ornament, you might want to write a little bit on it, a joy or a hope or a memory maybe of a past Christmas season. And then at any time during the service, come up and hang it on the tree. If you're just watching at home, you can still participate in this. If you write to bookoflife@uufcc.org, and we'll write your comment for you if you have one, and we'll hang it up for you. So, finally, I have some cautions for those of you here in person. Please remember that our restrooms are temporarily ungendered, and you may use either one. We have signs on the door indicating when, like as on airplanes, vacant or occupied. And number two, this is very important. We ask that you leave through this side door at the end of the service for socializing out on the patio rather than congregating inside, and it's just not as safe as being out in the open air. So though you're tempted to stop and talk to and greet friends, please take that outdoors if you will. We would be most grateful. Safety precautions. That said, welcome. Once again, we welcome all of you, especially those of you searching for a spiritual home. Most of us here were once in that position ourselves, seeking something larger than ourselves to be part of. A sense of rootedness, or something to hold us close as we extend our love and create meaning together. I think that we do that really well here at UUFCC. We're not perfect, of course, but we do strive for authenticity and connection. So please know that about us and avail yourselves of it. Whether it's your first time here or your 500th time, as I think it probably is mine, we feel sure that you'll find people here to befriend and to share ideas that strike you and to enact those liberal values that we hold dear. We hope you will join us in loving bravely, living justly, and offering welcome to everyone. If you are new here and want to learn more about this fellowship, you may email Mary Jane at office. No, you may email Mary Jane, but the address is office@uufcc.org, or you can visit our website at uufcc.org. But wherever you are and whoever you are, we're so glad you've chosen to spend this Sunday morning with us here. We begin our service by lighting the chalice. You'll see it up in front. Its flame is a primary symbol of the Unitarian Universalist faith tradition. It's a symbol of hope, of the quest for truth, of the warmth of community, and the light enlightenment of reason. I wonder, Ken, would you be willing to light our chalice this morning? And as Ken does so, please join me in reciting our affirmation, which I think you'll see up on the screen. Love and service is its law. This is our aspiration, to dwell through peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. Very well done. It's time now, if you're at home, to light your own chalice or candle. And now we will have Jim on the piano with a medley of music. Thank you, Jim. I love the contrasts. It's beautiful. Thank you. Our opening words this morning come from the man who is the topic of today's sermon, Albert Camus, otherwise known as Albert Camus. These words are taken from his essay called Summer, or L'été. He writes, "When you have once seen the glow of happiness on the face of a beloved person, you know that you can have no other vocation but to awaken that light on the surrounding faces. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. And that makes me happy, for it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me, there's something stronger, something better, pushing right back." In our tradition now, we have a Book of Life situation, which I neglected to bring up here. I wonder if, thank you, Lynn, if you will bring the book up to me. Let me explain. In our tradition, we revere the living of our days, and we consider our lives part of a sacred endeavor. We believe that the joys and sorrows we experience hallow our lives. Thank you, Lynn. And we generally enter them into this red book. This is what we call the Book of Life. If you have such a joy or a sorrow or a milestone and want to share it with us, first of all, you may email it to us to bookoflife@uufcc.org, and make sure that's no later than the Saturday before the Sunday service, where, at that service, the worship associate will read it to the congregation, and following that, we'll enter your message physically into the book for you. Also, if you are here today, or at any time, you may do that yourself before the service starts. It's on the back table, and the worship associate often forgets to bring it up with her or him, but here it is. I also, and speaking of joy, I'm asked to remind you that there's a survey in the weekly updates if you're on the mailing list, and Reverend Kathy encourages you to answer this very simple survey, 5 questions about what brings you joy. Well, let's see what items I have this morning in the Red Book. December 12th. 38 years sober, Robert Moran. Yay! Good for you, Robert. And I have a couple of others received online. The first one is my own, actually, so I didn't have to receive it online. I wrote it down. But my joy is in acknowledging, albeit belatedly, how beautiful the decorations here at the fellowship are. Just lovely. My sorrow is part of that because we failed to credit our lovely Laura L. for that work, most of which her other team of helpers claim she did herself. But I want to name that team of helpers also, Cheryl D., Catherine S., and Laura A. Thanks to all of you. It's striking, and I love this lack of red and green. I love the dark blue and the light blue. It just warms my heart.
Hey, me too.
Good.
On that committee.
Thank you, Sue. This milestone did come online, and it's from Stephanie. She writes, she reminds us that Pearl Harbor Day was last Tuesday. And she writes this: I don't know if we have any more World War II veterans left in the congregation, but my mother remembers where she was when she heard that news. She was 13 years old. A few years ago, my husband and I visited the site. where oil was still visibly seeping up from the ocean. It was too moving for words. I'm glad you found the word, Stephanie. We hold these joys and sorrows, whether spoken or not, in our hearts. We'll have a moment of silence now, followed by Jim on the piano, another medley. And while he plays, after the moment of silence, we invite you to come forward and hang your ornaments on the tree. Thank you, Jim. Before I introduce our speaker, Joseph, today, I'd like to remind you that we are currently a lay-led congregation and that the worship committee strives to provide a welcoming space and time to explore what we find most worthy. And that involves a variety of outlooks. So thank you, Joseph, in advance for speaking to us this morning. And we hope that your message will be meaningful to all. Take it away, Joseph.
Thank you. I'll be putting the lay in the lay-led today. I'm just for lay. So my name is Joseph Fenty. I've been part of this fellowship for almost 10 years, and it's been a joyful experience for me. It is a place of love and a place of wonderment for me. I've met so many good friends here, so appreciative of this audience. Today, you'll be hearing from me about my experience. I am indeed a secular atheist. If you never met one before, ta-da! There I am, and I exist in the flesh. And if you are a doubting Thomas, I can prove it to you. I'm a secular atheist that actually enjoys Christmas music. So here you go. I will tap along, sing along. I love music regardless of what its intention is. And maybe the intention is just to be joyful. So the name of my talk today is Searching for Meaning in a Purposeless Universe. Purposeless. So have you ever wondered, now these are my thoughts, so take them for what you may. It's actually, before I get started, this has always been a dream of mine, to put all these different ideas together in a text and to weave a tapestry. Now you may experience it as a bunch of shredded rags, but for me it is a tapestry of my understanding and how I make meaning out of life. So have you ever wondered if the universe has a purpose? Raise your hand, just as a show of hands. Okay, looks like the majority of you. Have you ever wondered if there is a God or gods? No survey there. What if there is no God or gods, and the universe has no purpose? Could you still have a meaningful and joyous life? Some people tell me I can't, but I have. Before we get started, I will be talking about my journey from theism to atheism. My transition was difficult, but necessary for me to achieve freedom, joy, and equanimity. I know from past surveys that many of you are atheists and agnostics. Unitarian Universalism is one of the organizations where theists and non-theists can gather to have a shared experience on Sunday morning. Can you think of any other group that does that? Thank you, UU. UU has a long tradition of nurturing both theists and non-theists. In fact, some of the secular organizations that we see today were actually founded by UU ministers. That includes the American Humanist Association and the Ethical Society. I don't know if you know of those or not, but there are many other organizations as well. So as atheists and agnostics, we rarely get to talk about our experiences and philosophies for fear of offending others. But rest assured, our journey are just as valid and interesting as any other. To my theists and spiritual friends, please take my words not as criticism of your choices. I completely support your freedom to choose, and I value your companionship on life's journey. Some of my best friends are theists. My intent is to share my joy at arriving at a philosophical safe harbor where I experience harmony and fulfillment. If these ideas resonate with you, good. If it doesn't, even better, because these ideas may provoke a lively discussion, which is what I live for. So, my talk today, as Sharon points out, does not necessarily represent the views of the fellowship, the worship committee, or any other committee. So, does the universe have purpose? Perhaps we should start with what does it mean to have purpose? This is my science background. Always define your terms before you launch into a discussion. So perhaps, okay, so the purpose is defined as an object to be reached, a target, an aim, a goal, a result that is desired, an intention, the act of intending to do something. Okay, does that sound pretty much on target? Does everything have a purpose? The objects may have a reason for existing, but they may not have purpose. Let me use an illustration. Let's say you're a city planner and you design a playground and the contractor builds it for you. You may say that the playground was intentionally designed for the purpose of providing children with recreation. But objects may have reason but not purpose. For example, we could look into a telescope, and by the way, just as an aside, please look at the sky tonight. The planets are aligning. It's just amazing. Actually, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, they're in the straight line, which for me is just a beautiful event. But anyway, so we look into a telescope, we see craters on the surface of the moon. We could talk about the reason the moon has craters, but would it make sense to talk about the purpose of the craters? Craters have no purpose, in my mind. We live in a universe that has produced life on this planet. Life may exist elsewhere, but we have no evidence for it yet. Soon, maybe. Not yet. Did the universe purposely or intentionally design life on this planet? What is the evidence that the purpose of this immense universe, with its threads of visible matter, dark energy, and dark matter, and vast regions of space, is to create the flora and fauna that we see today? What is the desired outcome or intention of the universe? The evidence indicates that the universe is 13.8 billion years old. The observable universe is about 93 billion light years across. The theoretical diameter of the universe is 7 trillion light years. Is this blowing your mind yet? I don't know, blew mine. And Homo sapiens have been around 300,000 years and occupy a tiny rock near an average star located on an arm of a rotating galaxy in the local group of galaxies. Does that make you feel small? I hope so. Made me feel real small. Why did the universe take so long to produce humans? If the universe had a purpose to produce humans, it took a very long time to fulfill its purpose. And if it did purposely create life, why did it do so? If the universe intended to make humans, it took a very indirect route. So the universe is organized around phenomena we describe using the laws of physics. Its size, composition, and movements can be predicted with very precise mathematics and theories. Whether it has a purpose is unknowable. I can't say that it doesn't have a purpose. It is unknowable to me. But the evidence for purpose and a designer, in my mind, since the evidence is not strong, is actually weak. How did life come to be? Maybe life emerged from natural processes and conditions that are rare in the universe. Improbable events have a way of presenting themselves given enough time. Throw a dice long enough, you will get a very improbable string of numbers. When I realized that the universe may have no purpose, I experienced an existential crisis. What's that? Have you had one of those? Don't raise your hand. Oh, there's one. One truthful guy. Okay, an existential crisis or existential dread can occur in life, particularly during the transition phases. It is often defined as a feeling of disquiet that arises from contemplation of whether her or his life has any meaning, value, or purpose. When confronting the plethora of choices about what to believe or to think, an individual may experience intense anxiety. Perhaps you have experienced this. Let me share my existential dread story with you. As a young adult in the year 1986, I was living in Brooklyn with my first wife and heavily involved in a religion. I was born in, which is to say I was raised from a baby to believe in the religion. I attended all the religious function and preached the good news of the kingdom at every opportunity. I lived in an insular ecosystem of reinforcing feedback loops. And that sustained my belief. On the outside, I appeared like a faithful congregant, but on the inside, my doubts about the veracity of the religious doctrine put me in a strong cognitive dissident feel, which provoked a crisis of conscience. The seeds of the conscience germinated in 1975, and by that time I was 13 years old, and that year the religion had intimated that the Gentile times would end and the Great Tribulation would come by Armageddon, and at that time I was fully prepared to be persecuted for my beliefs and to see the world destroyed as I knew it. Well, guess what? Well, you probably know the end to that story, right? So the end did not happen. It came and went. And it didn't happen because I lacked sincerity or faith or I didn't follow the rules. It didn't happen because it wasn't true. In the year after 1975, my religion recalculated their predictions and said, well, okay, didn't happen then, but it will happen in 1980, maybe 1990 latest. So in the summer of 86, I started to think, something's wrong. Something's wrong. So something changed in me and started just getting really uncomfortable. And I detected that I needed to think about what I was doing rather than to just do it. You know, sometimes you get in that phase, you just follow in the crowd and doing it. So I started using logic and scientific knowledge to interpret and understand my reality. I decided to reject the ideas and practices that lacked sufficient evidence. I stopped preaching things I didn't believe. I stopped attending the meetings. That put me at odds with my family and friends. And if you're watching here, hello to you. This may come as a revolution. This is my coming out party, so thank you. I'm being broadcast on the internet. I tried many religions and spiritual practices over time, but at some point I'd become dissatisfied with the dogma, the illogical tenets, the anesthetizing rituals. Over my life, I transitioned from fundamental theist to deist, and finally to agnostic atheist. I am an agnostic atheist and secular humanist. But that by itself, those labels by themselves were not enough. You know, I'm always trying to find meaning. It wasn't enough to find the meaningful and joyful life I needed. So what I did is I surveyed philosophy. Remember, how many of you had philosophy in college or any other setting? Wow, 2/3 of you maybe. That's good. So in my survey of philosophical ideas that deal with ethics, I encountered the work of Albert Camus, a Frenchman, in fact. He was most helpful to me in the work of other existentialist philosophers. So Camus is a very interesting man, comes from unlikely origins, a very poor family background. His parents were illiterate, but yet he rose to the top of the philosophical world because of his ideas and his amazing use of language. So Camus was born in French Algeria in 1913. He died at 46 years of age in a tragic car crash in 1960. He was a philosopher, a playwright, an essayist, and a French resistance journalist, and a civil rights activist. Camus is considered an existentialist and an atheist, but he rejected both topics because he didn't want those labels. But in fact, he is in that category. His most famous work is The Stranger, the Plague, the Rebel, and the Myth of Sisyphus. Has anyone read any of those? Ooh, I like this audience. He was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1957 in literature. At the age of 44, the second youngest recipient in history, his ideas appear in films, TV episodes, music, and the visual arts. Camus' ideas were well regarded after the Second World War. Camus, like most French philosophers of his day, is well known for his use of provocative language. He, of course, writes in French, but the power of ideas are not lost in translation. So I'm about to say something to you that may trigger you a little bit, but kind of stay with me. We'll get to a resolution of it. So any good philosophy is going to deal with what? What is the purpose of your life? And what do you do at death? What is the meaning of death? So we're going to get dark. Sorry. Okay, so in the Myth of Sisyphus, he says there is really only one real philosophical problem. That is suicide. Deciding whether or not life is worth living is an answer to the fundamental problem in philosophy, and all other questions follow from that. Camus is most famous with his contribution to what is called absurdism. He is often included in the genre of existentialism, but he rejects those. Absurdism refers to the conflict between the human tendency to seek inherent meaning and value in life and the human ability to find these with certainty. You're searching for meaning, but you can't find a certain answer. We apparently live in a purposeless and violent universe that is indifferent to our existence. Observations of the physical universe do not provide evidence for cosmic justice or perfect ethics or even a good recipe for vegetable broth. All indications are that the universe is immoral and indifferent to Homo sapiens. This indifference is not confined to us. We're not special. Of all the species that have ever existed on Earth, 99.99% and more nines are extinct. Many of them perished in cataclysmic events. Life is absurd. Human beings are constantly searching for meaning, but there's no dependable external source in the universe to reveal the answers we are searching for. According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, absurd is defined as a ridiculous, unreasonable, unsound, incongruous, having no rational or orderly relationship to human life. The absurd communicates a lack of unity and incongruency that is almost comical. Think of professional comedians. What do they focus on? They focus on the absurd events of life that run through the different roles we have as parents, as lovers, as workers. There is absurdity and comedy in all of these strands. According to the New World Encyclopedia, absurdity is a philosophical perspective that holds that the efforts of humanity to find meaning and rational explanation in the universe ultimately fail and are absurd because no meaning exists, at least not to humans. Absurdity emerges when you seek something you cannot possibly possess, such as a philosophical answer from an indifferent universe. Your ability to use reason and to discern your purpose from the universe is impotent. Human beings are like the character from Chalice, who is condemned by Zeus to go thirsty and hungry in Hades while standing in a pool of water and reaching out to a piece of fruit that is just beyond his reach. The Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy says this about the origins of the absurd. Absurd expresses a fundamental disharmony, a tragic incompatibility in our existence. To experience absurdity is a human feature. It's a human condition. When you go home and you look at your dog and cat, ask them what is absurd. They are incapable of understanding it. It is both your blessing and the curse. So the absurd is a collision or confrontation between our human desire for meaning and purpose in life and the indifferent silence of the universe. It is a thing that bonds us together. So here we are, desperate creatures, seeking hope and meaning in a hopeless world. Sartre, in his essay, Review of the Stranger, wrote this. He says, the absurd, to be sure, resides in neither man or the world. If you consider it separately, the universe is not absurd in itself. It just is. But since man's dominant characteristic is being in the world, which is the point of existentialism, to study your being in the world, the absurd in the end is an inseparable part of the human condition. So when you think about your life, the last word that comes up is the word I've been using a lot, absurd, right? Yeah, you think your life has meaning that will transcend time. Obviously, I do. You probably do. That's what we do. We've devoted our lives to meaning making. It cannot be absurd. But in the time scale in which you live, your life seems meaningful and important. Of course it does. We live these few years, and in that time, we build relationships, we do social justice, we do a lot of good things in life, and we should do those things. But as the time scale increases, what happens? The absurdity goes up, and the meaning declines. How will you be viewed in 50 years, 100 years, 50,000 years? Is something to think about. So according to Camus, we have to avoid the two forms of suicide and move on to acceptance. The first one is physical suicide. He said that's totally wrong. It is a giving into the absurd. We cannot fully come into ourselves if we give up. It's terrible. Do not do that. There's philosophical suicide, in which we kill off our inquiring minds to accept easy and stock answers to life's fundamental questions. So what is the third thing, the thing that he's actually recommending? The acceptance of the absurd. You can choose to accept the absurd by heaping scorn on it and rebelling against it, using sarcasm and wit to rebel against the absurd. Once accepting the absurd as a fundamental part of human existence, you could rebel against it by not giving in to it at all. Our rebellion can usher in freedom, self-discovery, and social justice. Though Camus rejected the identification of essentialism, his ideas fit into that school. Important philosophical writers include Friedrich Nietzsche and Fyodor Dostoevsky. Kafka and Soren Kierkegaard and Jean-Paul Sartre. Existentialism is the belief that the world has no intrinsic meaning or purpose or consequence. The individual bears responsibility for their actions and decisions. That doesn't sound too radical. Kierkegaard was a Danish philosopher, Christian theologian, and existential philosopher and cultural critic. He once said, "As I grew up, I opened my eyes, I began to laugh, and I haven't stopped since." So he did recognize the absurdity of life. He suggested our freedom the freedom of choice provokes deep and dizzying anxiety. He is widely regarded as the father of existentialism. Imagine that. Something so different than Christianity has its roots in a Christian theologian. Kierkegaard described the concept of angst. This is the first time, defining it as dread that comes from anxiety over choice, freedom, and ambiguous feelings. Kierkegaard claimed that humans live in the finite and the infinite. The finite is your actuality, where you live. The infinite contains the possibilities from which you must choose. You can either be obsessed by your choices and never become anything. You can choose, or you can lose yourself in the future, where we do not consider the possibilities and mindlessly choose what society, friends, and culture tell us to do. The infinite can overwhelm us with possibilities. So how do we resolve this dilemma? Kierkegaard believed that one must take a leap of faith. And the leap of faith is towards the Christian religion. It holds both the infinite and the finite in check. If you're interested in existentialism and you are the deist persuasion, take a look at Kierkegaard. So Dostoevsky, the famous Russian author, had a great influence over Camus' thinking. Of particular importance were the novels Demons and the Brothers Karamazov. Did I say that?
What?
Karamazov, right?
I still can't hear.
Karamazov. So, Karamazov.
Karamazov.
Right. You're not listening to me. Go back to sleep. Karamazov. In The Brothers Karamazov, Ivan Karamazov argues, what? The most famous of all quotes. If God is dead, then all is permitted. Right? Although Dostoevsky appears to argue for the presence of God, in which suicide may result, the lack of God or God's purpose, actually, the question of that actually opens the door to essentialism and secular humanism. So Sartre argues that humans are free to choose what they want to be within what's called your facticity, the circumstances of your life, and you are ultimately responsible for your lives. He claims that we engage in bad faith when we fail to accept our freedom and responsibilities and instead choose the familiar and easy without deeply thinking about our choices. He claims that essentialism is humanism, and I encourage you to Google that and read his essay about it. A foundational tenet of essentialism is that existence precedes essence. If you don't remember anything about essentialism, remember that. Existence precedes essence. What does that mean? It means that you live and experience the world before you know who you are and your purpose. Now we take it for granted. The great psychologists of our time that study early childhood development will verify that you experience the world through your motor skills, and you develop these skills over time in your language, and then you come into yourself. Now, some theists believe that essence precedes existence. What does that mean? This means that you derive your essence from the divine, and your purpose is to a large extent, and this is arguable, predetermined. In this vein, the purpose of human beings is to serve the divine, and that is why they were created. The concept of existence precedes essence is associated with the Platonic idea of ideal form. Some of you may know what that is. So in Camus' book, The Myth of Sisyphus, how many of you know that myth? That's a pretty popular myth. So in the book, he uses this Greek myth to identify how meaning can be derived from the repetitive nature of life. He says, you must imagine Sisyphus happy. Okay, think about that. I'm going to tell you the story. Can you imagine this character happy? According to the Greek story, Sisyphus is punished by Zeus for cheating death twice. Sisyphus loves life. He doesn't want to spend his time in Hades. Sisyphus is forced for all eternity to roll a boulder off a hill only to let it roll back down. Again, 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 for all eternity. Camus posits that this is a myth and this is an allegory for humans. As humans are condemned to search for our purpose and meaning in the presence of the absurdity of life personified by the unreasonable silence of the world. Here we go, rolling that hill up and down. So I found this on the philosophy page of the University of Hawaii. The myth of Sisyphus is a potent image of futility. Camus' response is that only the lucid recognition of the absurdity of existence liberates us from the belief in other life and permits us to live for the instant for the beauty and pleasure of the implacable grandeur of existence. Wow. Lucidity is the clarity and courage of mind which refuses all comfort, illusions, and self-deceptions. Camus suggests that we should struggle against the absurd just as Sisyphus struggled to push the rock up the mountain. Protest and rage are natural reactions to the absurd. We accept the disunity of humans and the universe. We try to break, not to break, and take up the challenge of creating a meaningful life for ourselves and our community. It is our challenge to resist the absurd. Man stands face to face with the irrational. He feels within him his longing for happiness and reason. The absurd is born from the confrontation between human needs and the unreasonable silence of the world. You see similarities between the punishment of Sisyphus and your own life. Does your life feel routine? Each day you wake up and you trot off to the bathroom for the morning pee. Make coffee, read a newspaper, eat breakfast, etc., etc. Most of your day plays out in these immutable routines. You contemplate this behavior, you may feel that they are meaningless, that you're just going through the motions. But the challenge here is to appreciate the routine as you would appreciate the regularity of your heartbeat. Do you hate your heart because it just does that routine over and over and over? No, you don't. You don't hate your lungs, even though they do the same routine over and over and over again. You can love the things that are routine, and you should take interest in the moment. And this is a genuflect to the Buddhists who say we should live in the moment. And actually, Camus was about to study Eastern religion when he was killed in the car accident. So Camus sees Sisyphus as a hero, a rebel, and a revolutionary figure. Sisyphus goes about his task with purpose, knowing full well the futility and meaninglessness. His devotion to the task is an act of defiance and courage. He may even choose to enjoy the work for its purpose. Sisyphus lifts each foot. As he lifts each foot, he may enjoy the transcendence of being. His beating heart, the movement of his breath, the grip of the boulder, the strain of his muscles, the movement of the gravel beneath his feet. In Camus' book, Revolt, he explores the idea of rebelling against the absurd. We rebel by personifying the Sisyphusian spirit of defiance in the face of the absurd. In the genuine rebellion, the individual opposes injustices. We are asked to confront and defeat unfairness, oppression, and indignities, and work together to defeat the forces that denigrate the dignity of our labor. Camus advises us to revolt against our crushing fate. We must choose to be meaningful beings in a universe that is indifferent to our existence and has nothing to say about how we should think or do. We rebel against our fate. as Camus said about the rebellion, in every rebellion, it is to be found the metaphysical demand of unity, the impossibility of capturing it, and the construction of a substitute universe. Rebellion, from this point of view, is a fabricator of universes. So, how might absurdism lead to a meaningful life? Well, because we're all bound by a common tragic fate, this should unite us. It should bind us in a solidarity of chains. Because the universe is mute on the question of purpose, you are free to create your own purpose. You have the power to create a meaningful life. My transition from being in existential crisis to equanimity was facilitated by existential philosophy and secular humanism. My acceptance of the absurd allows me to mitigate the anxiety I feel about my purpose. While the universe may not have a purpose for me, it may for you, but not for me, I can create that purpose and choose how I feel about my journey through life and craft the narrative that creates meaning. My joy comes from the freedom to choose my path unencumbered by the mystical or the traditional. I am the architect of myself, my own character and destiny. I am bold and defiant in the face of absurdity. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you very much. It's a great deal to ponder. We know that congregations exist because of the generous support of members and friends, and that it's both our privilege and our responsibility to contribute to the health and future of this fellowship. So to this end, your offerings to support our ministry by pledge or donation may be offered online in these days of distancing. This is also the second Sunday of the month, so a second basket exists up here for you as you leave. If you'd like to leave a physical donation today, that's what these baskets are for. And we'll have some words from Herb about the second helping phenomena, the second Sunday of the month, one of our traditions. Meanwhile, before Herb comes up here, there are several other ways you can give if you're not here in person. You can mail a check or drop it off in our mailbox. You can call the office to make other arrangements. You can donate through the Venmo app made out to Uufcc offering. And I would like to say to anyone who is here today for the first time, please consider yourself our guest and do not feel any obligation to give. Now, Herb, would you come up, please, and say a few words about the second offering, the second helping?
Mask off. Good morning. In the big scheme of things, we are a small fellowship. And we are a small fellowship without a minister. But this has in no way impeded us from showing our big heart, our willingness to support those in need, our generosity, our moral compass. The significance of our second helping has been greatly magnified since the onset of the pandemic. Our decision to exclusively support food pantries and delivery has, we believe, worked toward relieving the pressure, anxiety, discomfort, and often anguish that can accompany bare shelves and inadequate nutrition in many homes. Uufcc has stepped up big time. Since April 2020, our big-hearted fellowship has contributed over $43,000 to assist equally Harry Chapin Food Bank, CHAPS, and Meals on Wheels. You should be very proud of your effort. You deserve to feel very good about what we have accomplished. But, and yes, here comes the but, our job is not done. The pandemic continues. In a two-parent home, one is often unable to work due to the astronomical price of childcare. In a one-parent home, the unemployed parent or caregiver is often dependent upon the woefully inadequate federal SNAP program to feed dependents, young and old. So yes, we have more to do. We would very much like to round up to and even cross the $45,000 line for this holiday season. The season to give, the season to appreciate our good fortune, the season to care and to share. I have said it before, but I never tire of repeating. I am endlessly proud of being a part of Uufcc, the little fellowship that could, and I believe the little fellowship that will. Please direct your generosity to the office or up front here after service, annotating your checks with second helping. And for those who receive our gifts, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you.
Thank you. Very timely message. It's time for Life of the Community, where we make our announcements and talk about the special events and activities that are available here. And I would like to ask Nancy to come up. She has suggestions for us, things to point out about COVID that are relevant.
Hi there. I hate to be up here right before lunch for everybody during my business commute. That's always the worst time to talk. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know that I utilized the COVID testing center that's at the Forrest Nelson Library. It took me 15 minutes. I'm getting ready to go out of town and see my grandchildren. And it's free, fast. So if you ever have any reason to do that, if you got the sniffles and you still want to come on Sunday, for example, it takes like 48 hours and you'll have an answer. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew about that. That's it.
Thank you, Nancy. It's really important. I'd like to say on Fred's behalf that he regrets that when he announced his newsletter availability last week and had Corey show you a cartoon on the screen, he forgot to say that the cartoon was drawn by Joanne C. So, belatedly, thank you, Joanne, with Fred's apologies for the oversight. Next, as I think you know, Lori and the board are looking to you for your take on how our fellowship can move forward. Be assured that if you haven't yet heard from one of us, we will get to you. We want everyone's views. Many of us have been very busy with this, and it takes time, but it's worth it, and personally, I'm finding it extremely rewarding. Last, do join us on Christmas Eve in the sanctuary for a service of music and words and candles. We're having a 45-minute service beginning at 5:30 p.m. It will be live streamed. Special music is being arranged right now, and we hope that you will arrive early to enjoy it. We'll have more details on that for you in the weekly updates, so be sure, as always, to check those later this week. Immediately following the service, those present will be able to join the choir outside. This is a new phenomenon that sounds very promising. Those of you here can go outside with the choir for carols. That will impact the driveway, of course, so we ask that all who plan to stay wait until the driveway is clear. Now for our closing words. They are again from Albert Camus, and these words are from his personal notebooks. He says, "Find meaning. Distinguish melancholy from sadness. Go out for a walk. It doesn't have to be a romantic walk in the park or spring at its most spectacular. You don't have to multiply, you don't have to have multiple life epiphanies and discover meaning that no other brain has ever discovered. Just don't be afraid of spending quality time by yourself. Opt for privacy and solitude. Doesn't make you antisocial, doesn't cause you to reject the world, but you need to breathe, and you need to be." We now extinguish the chalice, and to remind you to be ready to turn your cell phones back on. Not quite yet, but in a minute, so get them out and get ready. Following the music, those at home are invited to stay for our social time on Zoom. Just be patient as the technology gets readjusted. Now please join me in our traditional recitation as Ken extinguishes the chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of hope, the fire of commitment, or the warmth of community. May those ideals shine in our lives and warm our hearts until we are together again. Go now in peace.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the Spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere.
Okay, please adjourn to the patio for socializing.
Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate you.